Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Happy Saturday. It's time for the match preview with me, Andrew Musgrove, and John Gibson. Come to you a few days later than usual, simply because Newcastle welcome West Ham to St James's Park on Monday. So we wanted to bring you the match preview a little bit closer to the game. Of course, earlier in the week, we brought you a Let's Talk About episode with Alexander Isak, where me and John talked about Newcastle's striker and his future and what it holds at Newcastle United. Hopefully, a new contract not too far down the line. If you haven't listened to that, go back and do catch up with it. It's well worth half an hour of your time. But we are here to talk about West Ham, as we say, the visitors on Monday. John, welcome back to the podcast. Are you excited for this one?
Well, at long last, we're back with football, even though it's 48 hours delayed Monday night. But yes, I am. I mean, in a way, the international fortnight got in the way of progress because we got ourselves on a mini roll after being a bit twitchy. And but this is the ideal game to build on that mini roll, and I'm looking forward to it greatly. Yes, absolutely.
Now, I'm trying to work out quickly in my head there how far Newcastle United could be down the table before they kick off on Monday because it's so congested. I know how far they could go if all the results go their way. They could be up to third if all the results go their way. But they also could be starting, the game against West Ham a little bit down the table. It could definitely be in the bottom half because it's so congested. And I guess, John, the fact that just a few points separate so many teams. You've got Chelsea third on 19 points. You go all the way down to Manchester United 13 on 15 points, and Newcastle sit in the middle of that on 18 points. It shows you just how important it is to keep on winning because one result that goes against you, and you could be, out of the pack, so to speak.
Yeah, we've got to be one-eyed about the whole thing and look after ourselves. The rest will take care of itself. If we look after ourselves, if we get 3 points, the rest can do what they do. I mean, the table, I'm trying to remember, it looks absolutely upside down to me. I mean, we're ahead of, I don't know, Spurs and, whoever, and yet above us are Forest and teams that you would never expect to be above us, Bournemouth or whatever. Table seems to be upside down, but that's fine. We're making ground again. We've got to be one-eyed. We've just got to look at what's in front of us and take care of business, and it's as simple as that. And I know what the natural reaction of all Geordie fans would be because we are on that famous pogo stick I keep talking about. Um, but I mean, the simple answer is people say, "Oh, but it's West Ham at home. We beat the best, but we don't beat the rest." And I know exactly what they're talking about. We beat Arsenal. We beat Forest when they were looking to go third. We draw with Manchester City, deny them 2 points. Yet we play Fulham, Bournemouth, and Everton and don't win any of them. And that's the situation we face here when we play West Ham. But we've got to we raise our game for the big teams, and we don't against the so-called more average sides. With utmost respect, well, we've got to get used to doing them. I mean, we really have to get used to doing them. And this is one of those games where at home to West Ham, let's be truthful, let's be ruthless. They're not in good shape at all. And this is at St James's Park, and anything short of 3 points would be catastrophic because it ought to be 3 points. Let's not beat about the bush. Let us talk about them having good players and doing this. They're a Premier League side. They will have good players. Bottom line is that if we are going to get anywhere this season, we beat West Ham at home.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think they will do for what it's worth. I think Newcastle United will
So
pick
do
up all
I.
3 points against West Ham. But you are right. For what they want to achieve this season, they have to do so. And just to emphasize how crazy the Premier League table is at the moment, because you are correct in what you say, John. West Ham are not in a good place. Lopetegui
No,
looks like he's on his way out. But should West Ham beat Newcastle United on Monday, which they won't do, by the way, but if they did, they would only be 3 points off Newcastle United. Like, that's how congested it is. It's absolutely crazy. But I also feel like being that congested focuses the mind that little bit more, and Eddie Howe will be using everything he can to his advantage. But you mentioned there, let's not talk about West Ham's players. Yes, they have good players. They're in the Premier League, of course they do. But we have to talk about Mr. Jarrod Bowen, who's probably their biggest threat, a man that we'd all love to see in the black and white of Newcastle. I mean, he above anyone else, John, is the one they're going to have to keep quiet.
Yes, oh yes, he's a good player. He's an absolute good player, and he proved that when he came back with England during this international break, when he just had cameo roles, but he ends up with his first international goal. He has struggled in this current West Ham side. He's adored by the fans in the way that Bruno and Gordon and Isaac is with us. He's adored by their fans. But one of the things that the manager's accused of is that players aren't playing from. And Jarrod is one of those that is, I'm not saying he's not played from because his heart is West Ham, but he has suffered when he is a quality player in the malaise that is overtaken West Ham. And Lucas Paqueta, who's a friend of Bruno's, is another. He's got his spot fixing case coming up in March, and he's quarter of the player that Manchester City once wanted. Things aren't going as well as they should. The interesting thing with West Ham, you should always be careful what you wish for. They got rid of David Moyes at the end of the last season after he'd won them their first trophy in 43 years, which is the UEFA Europa Conference League. What they wanted was to play more expansive football, don't we all? That's what they were after, and their heritage, is all about Moore, Hurst, and Peters, 3 World Cup winners blowing bubbles in the East End of London, and all this good players that have come since. So they wanted to go back to be more expansive, even though they won their first trophy in 43 years. So they bring in the Spaniard, with bristling with pedigree, having been manager of Real Madrid and Spain. And what happens? What's the outcome of doing that? They've got hammered. The Hammers have got hammered. They've lost 5 of their 11 Premier League games this season. They sit 14th, and you say that if they win, now they're 3 points off us. They're currently 5 points off a relegation place. So if they lose, where they're going to be? I mean, this isn't the West Ham we know. This isn't the West Ham who, at the end of last season, were looking to make that major step on from their first trophy and start hitting the heights. I mean, they got up to about 7th or something under Moyes. I'm not suggesting that I would want Moyes to be manager of Newcastle United, because I wouldn't. But in some ways, he's a safe pair of hands. He helps to build sides, and he was doing okay for them. I would suggest a new manager who was brought in to replace him because he had allegedly a better pedigree, is doing a lot worse than Moyes, and they're in a bad position. And you're quite right when you said early on that he is seen by West Ham fans as a dead man walking, and that he comes to St James's Park in desperate need of a win, because if he doesn't get a win, then how much longer is he going to be in the job? He's got the players to do the job, but are they so flat? Are they so depressed? Are they capable of playing each to their individual strength and pulling West Ham around? We've got to be careful that we don't underestimate them because of the form they're in, and because of the form we've begin to show. We've got to be very careful we're not sucker punched. But at the same time, we can't terrify ourselves. The point is they're not good, and we are supposedly much superior to them. So there should be only one outcome, and we've got every right to demand and expect that outcome. A draw would be a poor result. We should beat West Ham, and especially the West Ham in their current form.
Totally agree with you. I have to say, I'm very surprised that Lopetegui is struggling so much at West Ham. I thought he did a tremendous job at Wolves when he came in, and he saved them from relegation. I thought it was a really smart appointment. I thought Moyes was treated really badly, but I thought going from Moyes to Lopetegui was the right move. And I'm shocked that it's gone so badly for him. But speaking to people who watch West Ham, they just say everything's gone backwards, and it's a real It's another shock because, as you said, John, they have got a host of good players. They sold Declan Rice and they spent the money so well. They've got players like Mohamed Kudus in, who is absolutely superb. And they've got other exciting players in as well. And it looked like they bought really well. They got a brand new manager, and you were looking around and thinking, Newcastle United going to be battling with West Ham this season for a place in the top 6. And while Newcastle United are up there, West Ham certainly are not. But I do agree with you. This is a game that Newcastle United will be targeting to win and really have to be winning if they're serious about what they want to achieve this season. We can be confident about Monday without being disrespectful to West Ham. I think that's really important. It's a fine line, isn't it? But Newcastle United, John, at home, total different beast to what they are away. Obviously, they've only lost 2 games at home in 2024, one against City, one against Brighton, which they should have won, let's be honest. So I fully expect them to beat West Ham on Monday, and I think they'll probably do it comfortably as well. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the game is set up for them. This manager, who did do a terrific job at Wolves, has a pedigree of managing Real Madrid in Spain, but he looks about as happy as Avram Grant. Can you remember him when he managed West Ham and then he managed Chelsea? I mean, he looked as if it was raining every day of the week and the month and the year. And this guy looks as if he would like to be anywhere else bar where he is. And that rubs off on players, When players see a manager who's morose or who seems to have run out of ideas or almost be indifferent, and he's not indifferent because you can't be, because your job's on the line, but almost like shrug the shoulders and this is the way it's going. That affects players, and it certainly affects those on the terraces. And you're right, everybody I know that knows anything about West Ham are just counting the days till this guy goes. Now, it could be that he gets off his bed of nails and produces 3 wins on the trot, and the whole life's a whole different ballgame. He's got players available to him capable of doing that. But we've got to be ruthless. We've got to look after ourselves. If we are where we believe we are in standing, and if we want to go even higher, then we win at home to West Ham. And it's no good pussyfooting around, and it's no good saying, well, they've got good players and we've got to be cautious and we've got to show respect. And of course, we've got to do all those things, and we've got to guard against complacency. But we ought to do that automatically. We should also face the fact that what we're facing is a very, very, very winnable match, and that we desperately need the 3 points because we're still playing catch up. As you say, if you lost, or even by kickoff, where will we be in the table? But another 3 points will put us back up there. But the 3 points are essential. There's no question about that. And we should face facts. They ought to be harvested. They ought to be harvested. This is a match you can win.
I think you go for broke. I think you go for the jugular right from the off, set the tone, get in their faces. They're going to be properly lacking confidence. Newcastle United, okay, the international break probably came at the wrong time for them, but I still think they'll be in good spirits. They've got returning internationals as well. Tino Livramento, Lewis Hall making their debuts for England, Anthony Gordon getting on the score sheet. So the spirit should be really, really good around the dressing room at St James's Park. And I think if they start the game in a fast pace and really get in the faces of West Ham, they'll grab an early goal and they'll go on to get 2, maybe 3. I'm really intrigued, the wrong word, because actually, without being disrespectful to the West Ham defender, Todibo, who I thought would do really well in the Premier League. They signed him in the summer from Nice, I think it was. Him against Alexander Isak, I mean, that could be quite frightening for the Hammers, I think.
Quite wonderful for us.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
But I mean, it sounds great to us. And that's the thing as well. They got something like 9 signings for 155 million, backed by a new manager. Everybody gets excited. But the new manager is only drip fed the new players into the side. He's been very cautious about bringing them in. And then when he has brought them in, the guy that you've just been talking about has played so poorly, the punters are wondering why West Ham put such a high thing on being able to sign him. Um, None of it is working at the moment, and that's fine. That's to be taken advantage of. In the meantime, wasn't it wonderful to see us once again having three players in the England starting lineup with Livramento, Hall, and Gordon? I mean, I go back to the old days when I was following Newcastle, when I was following England everywhere during the entertainers, and I think we had the last time we had was there in '97 or something when Shearer might have been Lee and Batty played against Georgia for England together. But in the old entertainers days, we were knee deep in current internationals. I mean, off the top of my head, apart from Shearer and Ferdinand and Barry Venison and Rob Lee and Steve Howie and David Batty and Peter Beardsley, they were all playing for England while playing for Newcastle United. Were knee deep in them. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting watching Newcastle United and both fullbacks and outside left are Newcastle United players. Absolutely wonderful. And if Livramento and Hall don't come back up here taller than Dan Burn, I want to know why. Because they should be feeling absolutely magnificent. Because they didn't only, they're not now England full England internationals, but they played so well. Hall in his game and a half and Lamento in his game, they played so well that they've got to take huge confidence out of that and go into to West Ham and say, hey, we are going to show our class here. We're going to stamp our class on this game. And it's fabulous the way they will have come back. Elated because the two fullbacks, of course, because it was their breakthroughs, but it was also, let's not forget, Anthony Gordon's first goal for England. So he's going to be on a massive high as well, isn't he? So good on them. All the omens are good. Let's not spoil it.
Yep. I mean, I remember watching the West Ham game against Tottenham at the end of October, and you just looked at them in that second half and you thought, goodness me, like, you look awful. You look like you are destined for the championship. They just couldn't get the defence organised. They were so open. And I look at how Newcastle United have played in the last few games and just think this is a game in which Newcastle United can win and win comfortably. Anthony Gordon, good spirits, getting down the left, hitting the full backs. Alexander Isak, whether it's in the box or whether it's dropping deep to get the ball and then driving forward. And whether it's Newcastle United pressing high and getting in the faces of West Ham, or whether it's, absorbing the pressure and then hitting them on the counter, whatever way Newcastle United play, I fully expect them to enjoy Monday. And I hope that I'm not wrong, because having supported Newcastle United, John, for all the time I have, and I'm a little bit younger than you, so you have a few years on me, it's these sort of games where you can't help but fear that it's a bit of a banana skin.
We've got to stop doing that. I can thoroughly understand that, Andrew, and that's the way all Geordies are, because we've been brought up on banana skins. That's our favourite fruit. We're used to banana skins, and every time when we play the tough sides, we think we've got a chance. And when we play all these sides that we ought to blow out the water, the first phrase that comes to mind is banana skin. Well, we've got to rid ourselves of that. If we're going to be the club that we intend to be, if we are going to be a club that's going to win domestic cups, if we are going to be a club that gets in the Champions League, not as a one-off, but quite regularly, then we've got to banish banana skins. We haven't to look forward to the West Ham match and worry about it being a banana skin. We've got to look forward to it and say, listen, we are going to win this, and it's a matter of how many goals we're going to win it by. And that's not being complacent. That is being ambitious. That is being driven. That is being what we are. It is not being complacent whatsoever. It is being truthful. It's been realistic, and it's been saying, look, I'm not going to hide under a bush. You don't think that Brian Clough went round telling Nottingham Forest or Derby County they were facing a banana skin? He installed in them why, despite them being Nottingham Forest, not a big club, They would beat the big clubs. They would beat Liverpool. They would beat Arsenal. They would win the European Cup, which it was called then. We've got to forget about banana skins, and we've got to get in there. I don't mean us fans, I mean the team. And hope I can understand why the fans worry about banana skins, because we've had that many of them. As I say, the greengrocers have run out of bananas in the northeast. We've got to start doing what we should be doing, and I agree. I agree, and I think you do. You know, when we had the build up to Arsenal coming up here, we felt more excited than we do with the build up to West Ham, because Arsenal, we didn't know it might be a draw when we played Man City up here. But we thought we'll put in a performance, we'll give them a game, the crowd will get behind it. And then we play West Ham and we think, oh dear, we've got to watch, we're not complacent, we've got to show respect. We played away to Fulham, we played away to Bournemouth, we played away to Everton, and we didn't beat any of them. And we ought to have done.
Yeah, I think this is a really important test for Newcastle United, because we've seen them beat Chelsea in the Cup. We've seen them beat Arsenal, two top sides. We've seen them beat Forest, who were the informed side in the Premier League and are still a few places above Newcastle United. So that was a big, big test. This is a different sort of test. This is a team that is low on its luck, low on its spirit. And it is a sort of team that Newcastle United in the past few years have struggled against. Not West Ham themselves, because they've got a really good record against West Ham, but in terms of the position and the way that the team is playing and their form and what have you, it is a team that Newcastle United have struggled against. And it's a really important game, because they've shown what they can do against the very best. But there's always that question, even after they beat Arsenal, even after they beat Forest, you go, brilliant. But can they do it against the side in the bottom half of the table who are looking down rather than up? And they have to, because they've shown what they can do against the very best. So now let's go and do it against the very average. And I think they will do, but they have to.
I think the situation is, Andrew, as well, if we delve beneath the surface and say, how is it that we get results against Arsenal and Man City, and how is it that we not get results against Everton and Fulham, and we worry about West Ham? I think the difference is Newcastle, by nature, with what they've got, like to counter-attack. They like sides that come onto them, and then they use their pace when they're breaking out. The pace of Gordon and Almiron or Murphy, Isaac, Harvey Barnes, whoever it is, to get them up that pitch and hurt sides with their quickness. When we are given the ball, when it is thrown to us and they say, right, we're going to have two banks of four, you break us down. That's when we can get a little bit huff and puff and a little bit stagnated unless we get an early break and get a goal up. And I think that's where the difficulty comes. And when we play sides like West Ham, we think, if they come here to dig out a result, we've got to break them down, and that can be difficult. And I think we find that more difficult, which is one of the reasons why we find getting results against the more average sides, because the big sides won't sit back against us. They'll come at us, and then we can counter with our pace. But will this lot come at us and let us counter with their pace, or will they sit in two banks of four and say, you're at home, chuck us the ball and say, right, show us what you can do?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And Eddie Howe was asked about Newcastle becoming more of a possession-based side, and he kind of said, well, we've talked about it, but there's no point trying to be something you're not. And at this present point in time, Newcastle are much more dangerous on the counter. So it's certainly going to be an interesting watch to see how this sets up. And obviously that relies on what West Ham are going to do. And Newcastle United are unbeaten in their last 5 against West Ham, and they've lost only 1 in their last 10 against West Ham. So the results and the history is certainly in their favour. West Ham, John, have kept just 2 clean sheets in the last 28 away games, which again is definitely in Newcastle United's favour. They conceded 19 goals this season. They will be missing Kudus and Alvarez due to suspension and there was a long-term injury to Fulkirk as well. It was a big summer signing. That just, of course, just heaps more misery onto the West Ham fans and the manager who is under pressure. Let's talk about John, Newcastle United starting 11. I don't suspect this conversation is going to last very long at all, but I will ask you anyway. Any changes?
Just one. Burns out, so with a 1 match suspension, so there's got to be one change. I think Lloyd Kelly is bound to be a shoe-in then, because the guy that would have challenged him for a position in the back, Emil Kraft, is now available through injury, but could have played Kraft right-sided centre-half, moving Shaw across the left-sided. That option's not with us now, so I would think Kelly would come in directly on the left side for Burn. You're not going to change your two England fullbacks, are you? And you're not going to leave Shaw out. There's no competition for Pope. I think the midfielders look very balanced, with Longstaff, Bruno and Willock, who's beginning to look like the Joe Willock we knew and loved. I think it's very harsh on Tonali, who keeps going away with Italy and not just starting, but being their standout player in internationals in the side as good as the Italians. I mean, they're not the world-beaten side they used to be, but they're pretty decent. And Tonali's their star man, and yet, you know, they Azuri must look at it and say, how the heck is he our star man every game, and he can't even start for a club like Newcastle United? And by the way, what I mean by a club like Newcastle United, I mean not a Champions League side even. And that must baffle them. But I hope it doesn't, upset Sandro too much, because his moment's going to come and he will establish himself in the team. There's no question about that. Ability does that. At the moment, he's a great impact sub, because when he comes on, he doesn't pass sideways, he drives forward. And, that's a big difference. He passes forward, Andrew. That's a lost art, That used to be a given. That was a given. Players pass forward because that's the way you were going. Now, players pass sideways, and you know why? Because of your famous stats. Completed passes. They like completed passes to be a huge number. And by moving it 10 yards sideways, it's a completed pass. By driving forward and pushing it forward is taking risks. But I mean, it'll happen for Tonali, but at the moment, he's an impact sub for me in the way that Harvey Barnes is an impact sub when he comes on and can finish. Because if we went back to the midfield, it would be, you would say it could be Joe Linton, Bruno, and Tonali. They're three big beasts, but it didn't work. The balance didn't work because they all can play defensively, they all can play offensively, and nobody knows quite who's doing which job. And with the dirty knees guy in there, Sean Longstaff, it is much more balanced. And Willock brings that something different. So he's going to have to wait for his moment. It's going to come. He's a quality player. I hope he doesn't get frustrated too much after 10 months out, because it will come. So you asked the question about changes, Andrew. For me, there would only be the one, which would be Kelly for Burn. But there would be one other significant change for me on the pitch, and that would be Gordon going back to playing his favourite position of the left wing, and Joe Linton taking up what is a real problem position for Newcastle, outside right. Because Joe's, bless him, I mean, Man Mountain can play anyway, apart from centre forward. He can play absolutely anyway. I mean, he can play left wing, he can play any of the midfield three, and he can play right wing. I'm not suggesting he thinks it's his best position, but he just digs those two big tree trunk legs of his into the ground, and nobody moves him, and then he attacks. And he can play the right wing better than Gordon can play the right wing, because Gordon looks as if he doesn't want to. And I can understand why he doesn't want to, because he's England's outside left. I mean, Livramento and Hall on England's fullbacks, I mean, regular, yet, because Alexander Trent-Arnold and Kyle Walker on the right side might have something to say about it. Luke Shaw, if he ever gets fit again on the left side, will have something to say about it. But Gordon is our outside left. Now, naturally, he doesn't want to play outside right. at club level, I mean, game after game after game after game after game, because it put, especially with a new manager coming, Tuchel, because it puts him under pressure for his international place. Joe Linton can play outside right, and I would rather they leave Willock where he is in the centre three rather than move Joe back and let Joe play outside right, Gordon outside left, and Isaac, rather than bring in a fit again Murphy. I would rather they stuck with Joe Linton outside right, Gordon outside left, and the one change at centre half.
I think that's what will happen. And Alexander Isak loves playing against West Ham. He scored in all three of his Premier League games against them, and he scored twice in both of the meetings last season. So hopefully a few more goals to come. And fantastic bench Freddie Howe to turn to, with the likes of Tonali and Harvey Barnes to come off the bench and change it or shore it up, whatever is needed. And I think we just got to pay tribute to Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock for taking the opportunities and playing so well that they're keeping a man like Tonali out of the squad. And that's exactly what Howe will want, that competition, just driving his players on. But before we get your score prediction, John, I just want to quickly talk about Lloyd Kelly, who will start on Monday because of that suspension to Dan Burn. It is a massive opportunity for him because I'm not doubting for a second, even if he has the best game of his career, Dan Burn will come in after the suspension and Lloyd Kelly will be dropped back to the bench. But what Lloyd Kelly needs to do is to make sure that he plays well enough that Eddie Howe sees that he's there, because he hasn't taken his opportunities when they've come. I've been impressed with what we've seen against Chelsea in the Cup. It was great. I thought in the early games of the season when he did appear, he did very well in the air. I thought, he's shown real promise and real sign of what he can be. But now he's got 90 minutes to show that, and he needs to put in a good performance and really just give Eddie Howe something to think about. And also give Dan Burn something to think about as well, because competition at the end of the day is the foundation to a successful side.
Absolutely. The last game, I think it was in the League Cup that he played for us, he did exceptionally well. That was his best game in a black and white shirt. He's got heading ability, he's got positional sense. He brings a quickness to the centre of the defence that we haven't got otherwise, because neither Shaw nor Burn are quick. So he brings an added quickness in there. And he shouldn't be downhearted, because so often new people in at Newcastle don't make an immediate impact. And, we've talked about Gordon, we've talked about Lewis Hall, who are both exceptional sort of examples of that. And neither's he since he came here. But he will grow into it. He needs time. Time is on his side. You don't think time's on your side when it isn't happening for you. I'm certain Lewis Hall didn't. He was only 19 when it wasn't happening for him. But he's admitted since he got as frustrated as it was possible to be during last season. And it's all come up smelling of roses, and I hope it does for Kelly long term. He hasn't got off to the greatest of starts, but there again, as I say, players with respect that have turned out better than him so far, like Gordon and Hall, suffered in exactly the same way. He will bring a quickness to the back. He doesn't, it doesn't seem like a huge drop down in standard. I hope he does well, and I think that he'll do well enough. And this is a better game to come in. You don't want to necessarily be facing Manchester City and Haaland running all over you, flattening the end of the turf, physically flattening the end of the turf. West Ham, yes, Premier League side, all that, but this is Premier League level. He should be okay, and I hope he is okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed. He did come off the bench against Arsenal, John, in the 95th minute of 8 minutes of added time. So he didn't even have time really to get warmed up, but he did come off the bench. And a game that many people actually expect him to start in, funny enough. So opportunity for him this Monday, and hopefully he takes it and just gives everyone something to think about. Before we get John's result prediction rather for Monday, just a word to say that this episode is brought to you by NORD VPN, and there is a special discount offer in our podcast description box for you to take advantage of. Download NORD VPN to keep yourself safe from the scammers and the hackers out there. And there's a host of other benefits as well. It will cost you a monthly subscription fee, which is about the cost of a premium cup of coffee a month. So it is well worth your time and your effort and your dollar, and it will keep you safe. It is a brilliant piece of software to have on your laptop, on any device really. It can be used up to 10 devices, so you get your money's worth. Hit the link in the podcast description box. Help support the podcast. It's much appreciated. John, how is Monday going to go?
3 points, obviously, and I would expect it to be comfortable, especially if we score in the first 20 minutes, so that they can't just play the bogged down routine and it takes with the 68 minutes to get the first goal, etc., etc. If the game goes the way I anticipate it would go, now I would expect 3-1, 4-1, and I'm being generous, giving them 1.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 4-1 as well. I'm going for a win. I think it's going to be comfortable. Give them a goal. We're feeling a bit generous, but I think Newcastle United will have a party on Tyneside on Monday and shoot up the league to 3rd or 4th, depending on other results. But we say a must win, not in the terms of a must win because anyone's under pressure. It's just a must win for their aspirations for this season. So I'm backing them to do that. I'm sure the 52,000 who will be there on Monday and the rest watching at home as well will be confident, but not arrogant about this game. But hopefully 3 points it is. Thank you, as always, to John for providing the match preview. Thank you to you guys for tuning in and listening. It's much appreciated. Give the video a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Share the pod amongst your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. And tune in on Sunday morning, which is tomorrow, for the view from the opposition to get a bit of insight into what West Ham will bring to the party on Monday night. Thank you, as always, and for myself and John, we'll see you guys very soon.